Thank you all for being here, and of course, thank you to the Troy Public Library and the Clawson Community Coalition for partnering with us this evening to bring you this expert panel on opioid addiction. I wanted to tell you just a little bit about the Troy Community Coalition. So we have been in existence since 1991. We are a data-driven organization, so we look at our local data regarding drugs, alcohol, and tobacco, and that's data through the police department, the schools, the hospital, and that is how we create our strategic plan. We know that just one strategy is not enough. We have to implement numerous strategies across all sectors of our community to be effective, and that is what we do. We have been putting on proactive prevention programming in the schools and the community since, of course, 1991. You all have received a packet, and I'm going to go through that packet as we get closer to the end, but there is that white index card in your packet. So if you do have a question, we're going to ask you to hold your questions till the very end, but you could write your question down so you don't forget it, okay? And with that, we are ready to get started. Our first individual who will be speaking is Dr. Melissa Iben. She is owner and chiropractor of Pure Health Center in Troy. So, Dr. Iben, come on up. Dr. Iben, if you could walk, we were saying, got to walk this way, cords. Okay. And this is the only microphone that will work, so everybody has to use it, okay?
Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I want to thank the library and the Troy Community Coalition for allowing us to speak about this hot topic, this crazy epidemic that's going on. It's happening, and it's affecting everybody. It's affecting doctors, lawyers. Really, it doesn't, if you have a brain, you know, you can become addicted. So it's really, really a crazy time. I'm going to be talking about what opioids are. I think there's a lot of confusion on what they actually are, how they're affected in the brain, and then also how are they affecting society right now. So what are opioids? Opioids can be natural, semi-synthetic, or synthetic chemicals that are used to reduce pain. So they're typically prescribed for moderate to severe acute pain. Actually, when they were created, they were used and prescribed for hospice patients and terminally ill patients with stage 4 cancer. So that elevation of pain. Some of the common prescriptions that you may hear of out there right now are hydrocodone, which is Vicodin. So that's pretty common. Oxycodone, which is Oxycontin. Oxymorphine, which is Opana. Methadone, and fentanyl. So this chart shows how many prescriptions are out there per 100 people per state. So you can see on the higher end of the spectrum is places like Alabama, West Virginia, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Kentucky. So that ranges from about 128 to 143 prescriptions per 100 people. And then Michigan is high. It's up there too. It's about 107. So the most common or frequently prescribed opioid right now is hydrocodone. So out of the 207 million pain reliever prescriptions that are out there, about 124 million make up the hydrocodone, which that's 60% of the pain medication. So you've probably heard it quite a bit. So in 2016, a total of 11.5 million people in the U.S. misused or abused prescription opioid drugs. So there's kind of a confusion too about what, you're prescribed this drug by your doctor. When are you misusing it or abusing it? And it's usually when you're taking it not as the bottle, as the bottle says, or as its original intended use, or you were never prescribed it in the first place. This chart just kind of shows some of the most abused drugs out there. Prescription drugs are one of the most abused drugs by teens. You can see anybody over the age of 12 and older. There's about 3.3 million people that abused in 2016. So, and that's, after alcohol and marijuana, obviously. So this graph just kind of shows, or this chart just shows, the differentiation between the three kind of main drugs that are out there that are prescribed. So obviously you have the strong pain relievers, those are the opioids. And how they work, they relieve moderate to severe pain, which we talked about, and they block the pain signal that goes to the brain. When you abuse it, you can get high, you can increase the feeling of well-being, and kind of go over and over the drug names again. So you have Vicodin, Oxycontin, Percocet. And then we have the stimulants. So that's going to be more for like ADHD conditions. They speed up the brain activity, increase your heart rate, increase alertness, and elevates your blood pressure. So you abuse it to feel alert, feel focused. A lot of maybe students use it for exams. Some people use it to lose weight when it's abused. Those drugs are Adderall, dextrosyn, Ritalin, and Concerta. And then we have sedatives. So that's when everything, the central nervous system kind of slows down. So it depresses the brain, central nervous system, decreases heart rate and blood pressure and breathing. You feel calm. A lot of people use it to feel calm, reduce stress, and to help you sleep. That's the Valium, Xanax, Ambien, Klonopin. So those are the type of drugs. So how are people getting opioids right now that are not for medical use? So you can see this chart shows through like 300 through a whole year. So in the first month, you get it from a friend for free, friend or family member. And then you can see as you go through the year, the people kind of get a little more desperate. So they don't get it for free anymore, but they seek it through multiple doctors. They go to their friends, but they're buying it from them now. And then also they're going to drug dealers. And now let's talk about how it works in the brain. So you have opioid receptors. They're in the brain, they're in the spinal cord, they're in the gut. The opioid, the medication, attaches itself to the receptors, and it blocks that pain message. And so it reduces the pain, overall pain. When that happens, you have a release in dopamine. And so that surge in dopamine is actually, that's what causes that euphoric relaxation feeling that people kind of crave and become addicted to. So those repeated surges over time actually lowers you have a higher tolerance for the medication, and that's when you get addicted. So the opioids actually work very similar to heroin. So we'll talk about that. So prescription opioids and heroin chemicals are closely related, and their effects, especially when misused, can be very similar. Because heroin may be cheaper to get, people may have become addicted to the prescription pain medications and then sometimes switch to heroin. So your 80% of people that were addicted to heroin started off with an opioid. Heroin deaths have more than tripled from 2010 to 2015. And the largest increase was actually 2014 to 2015. So it went from 5,500 to about 9,500. So that was quite the leap. So I think maybe that's when either prescriptions were given out a little bit more readily. So we're not really sure, but. So this slide just kind of tells you what happens if you start to what happens before you start using heroin. So you're more likely. Most people have used one drug before, and a lot of people have actually used 3. So if you've used alcohol before, you're 2 times more likely to use heroin. If you have used marijuana, 3 times more likely, cocaine 15 times, and opioids 40 times more likely. So as a chiropractor, I see a lot of patients with pain, and the people that I've seen that are using these opioids, they're actually not really even working because they're building up a resistance to it. So their pain, they have to take more, and their pain kind of stays the same. So Dr. Farkas is going to discuss, too, the alternatives of what we can do. And as a chiropractor, I know chiropractic works, and it's natural. So that's kind of what I'm seeing in my office right now. And also, when you're prescribed these drugs, really do your research and think, is this something I want to go get into? So yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'm going to hand over the mic to Nancy. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ivan. So many people say, you know, what can I do to help? What can I do to prevent this from happening? Well, one of the first things you can do is you can clean out your medicine cabinet. Keep your prescription drugs under lock and key. So many times the family bathroom is the only room in the house that has a lock. And a lot of times people keep their prescription drugs in it and they don't realize that maybe a teenager or their son or daughter is going in there and sneaking a few of them. You know, now the Super Bowl is coming up soon, and this is what some of the kids do. They go home, they raid the family medicine cabinet, they all meet back up with their friends, they get a bowl, they dump the drugs in that they raided from their family medicine cabinet, and then they take a handful. And they don't even know what they're getting at. So that's one of the ways that you can prevent this from happening is lock up your prescription drugs. At one time, the coalition, we were providing lock boxes to the community, and we have given away over 400 of these lock boxes so people could keep the prescription drugs locked up. We've also heard from real estate agencies that when they would hold an open house, people were going into the house pretending that they were interested in purchasing it when they were really raiding the medicine cabinet in that home. So if you are selling your house, keep that in mind. Also, you know, the holidays just passed, but every holiday I always have family in my home. And I always clean out my medicine cabinet. I think my nieces and nephews have the best intention, but you never know what could be going on in their life, and they could be tempted. And that way, they're never tempted because they're not there. So that's what you can start off with doing. Now, our next speaker is Angela Bogata. She is an individual in recovery, and she is recovering from prescription drug abuse, and she has a very interesting and powerful story to tell us. So thank you, Angela, for being here.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Angela Bogota. Like she said, I'm a person in long-term recovery, and for me that means that I have over 5 years of continuous sobriety from drugs and alcohol. Thank you. So the reason I come and tell my story, it's important to me to let you guys know that recovery is possible, and also let you guys know some of the decisions that I had made along the way that I think led me down this path to becoming addicted. So for me, just to give you a little bit about my background, I grew up in a suburban home, probably, if any of you guys have kids, a lot like where your kids are growing up right now. So, 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. I had a sister, a great, loving mom and dad. I was on the cheerleading team, ran track and field. My grades weren't perfect, but when they said like she was a good kid, I think that's what people would have said about me. And upon leaving high school, I didn't really think about going to college right away. I had kind of spent some time at a real estate agency during high school, did some like part-time work for them, and had actually got very lucky getting a job at a Fortune 500 company right away. And I was going to be selling mortgages. And so that's what I did. And while I was selling mortgages there, I had one of my friends had given me, and not all the drugs that I used were opiates. So some of these drug names that I'm going to be listing off are not opiates. But the first drug that I was really introduced to there from a friend was Adderall. And I thought to myself when I had tried it that I was going to be using this prescription drug as a performance enhancing drug. I was working about, I would say 70 hours a week there, and I thought to myself, this will help me perform at this job. And really as simple as that, I had kind of became addicted to this prescription pill very, very quickly. First, it was like, 1 or 2 a week. Then it had accelerated very quickly to the point where I had built up a really big tolerance to it, to the point where I had difficulty falling asleep at night, and talked to my doctor about it, but really not being honest about the fact that I was abusing this medication, and then was given Xanax. And had very quickly become addicted to that, and started mixing it with things that I was getting from my friends, opiates, mixing it with that, and graduated to the point where I originally was telling myself I was doing this to perform at my work, and ended up at the point where I was nodding out at my desk, and now had lost, this job that I was very lucky to get in the first place. Within a period of, I want to say, 6 months. It's interesting how addicted people in my world are kind of magnets to one another. I had met this guy who was a little bit more experienced in this world than I was. He had already been abusing heroin, and at the time had said that he was recovering from that, but he was using some other prescription pills. And I had never been introduced to recovery before. I didn't know what that meant. He said, we can, steal from department stores, use that money to supply for our habit. So within a period of 6 months, I was now, from working at a Fortune 500 company to stealing every single day to supply for my drug habit. I had worked at this company for a period of 5 years. So normally, got addicted to these drugs, and with a period of 6 months, stealing every day to supply for my habit. If it can give you any idea of how quickly these drugs can hijack your thinking process, right? It's like I'm driving the bus, and all of a sudden, I'm just not driving the bus anymore. I'm not able to think clearly. All that matters is that I'm able to continue using these drugs. That's all that mattered to me. One day, obviously, if you're living off of stealing people's merchandise to supply for your habit, you're going to get caught doing something like this. So we get caught. He gets taken in on some sort of a warrant for something. I get let go on like a personal bond or something like that. And I am so desperate because I have no money, no nothing. He has all the money and drugs or whatever it is stashed away somewhere, that I committed an armed robbery to bail him out. Just to give you guys an idea of how completely distorted my thinking was at that time, I'm laying on a jail bunk for the first time in my life, and I'm thinking not about what is this, I told you I have an amazing, loving family. I'm not thinking about, what is my amazing, loving family going to think? Armed robbery, how much time does that carry in prison? The only thing that I'm thinking about in this moment, complete transparency here, is how am I going to be able to convince this jail psychiatrist to prescribe me something to take away this emotional pain? And for the first time in my life at that point, I'm very fortunate. I got some clarity, right? And I said to myself, this is crazy. This is insanity. And I got a judge who understands this addiction thing. My crime was not eligible for any sort of drug court or sobriety court or anything like that. But she did recommend that I get the help that I need when I was incarcerated. So I did get, I got sentenced to 21 months in prison. But at the end of my stay there, I did get 6 months of rehabilitation help. And I gotta say that 6 months of rehabilitation help absolutely saved my life. For the first time in my life, I got the help that I needed. I got to learn about like cognitive behavioral skills and some of the, the 12 steps and all sorts of things that I had no idea about. I did a year of sober living after I had left there. I took all the suggestions that they gave to me and I embraced them. After about a year of that, after about a year of sober living after I had left there, I ran into somebody from an organization called Families Against Narcotics. I started to speak at some of their public forums, and they asked me if I'd be willing to speak at some of the schools to the kids in the area. So I've been spending about the last 4 years now educating, or 3.5 or so, educating the kids in the area about the dangers of using substances, and how I really believe that this started for me in high school when I was abusing, alcohol, and took my first prescription pill, and how that opened the pathways to leading to this abuse. If I hadn't, done some of those things, how my life could have went down a different path. So I really thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening, and thanks again.
Thank you for sharing, Angela. One of the things that you can do as a parent is you can drug test your child. If you sense that there's something wrong or your child might be using, even though they deny it, there are drug test kits out there. As a matter of fact, the Troy Community Coalition does sell an 8-panel drug test kit for $25, and that is something that you can use in the privacy of your home, and you can get the results within 5 minutes. And I did bring you just a sample to show you what it looked like. It's just a urine cup, and then in this packet is a little dipstick, so very easy to use. Parents have said that they have utilized that drug test kit as a form of prevention, because if their child is going out on a Friday or Saturday night, they can say, when you get home, I'm going to drug test you. But it also gives the child an excuse not to use. If they're with their peers and their peers might be pressuring them to use something, they can say, I cannot use because therefore, my parents are going to drug test me when I get home. So that's just a thought on what you can do. Now our next expert panelist is Sergeant Dan Langbein, and he's from the Troy Police Department. He serves on the Oakland County Narcotics Enforcement Team. So welcome, Dan.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to represent the Troy Police Department here today. A little background on me. I've been with the department for 17 years. Prior to being promoted to the rank of sergeant a few months ago, I spent 5 years as a plainclothes detective. I spent 3 of those years with our Special Investigations Unit, and one of our primary jobs there is to conduct surveillance on people committing serious felonies in Oakland County. So a lot of that had to do with following people and arresting suspects doing home invasions and breaking into businesses. And the vast majority of these people were committing these crimes in order to feed their drug habit. And opioids are by far the drug of choice these days. I also spent 2 years assigned to the Oakland County Sheriff's Narcotic Enforcement Team. While I assigned there, I saw the emergence of fentanyl, which is 30 to 50 times more potent and deadlier than heroin. Drug dealers use this synthetic opioid, which is fentanyl. They add it to the heroin, and it makes it a lot stronger and more potent, therefore more sought after by the users. A small amount of fentanyl can be very deadly. You can breathe it in the air, you can touch it on your skin, and this makes law enforcement's job much more difficult these days. We used to confiscate or seize the heroin. We used to be able to do a little field test to figure out what's in it, and we can't even do that anymore. We got to hands off, send it right to the lab. An important role for law enforcement is to minimize the flow of dangerous drugs into the area and to bring to justice those who are profiting off these drugs. Detroit Police Department currently has an officer assigned to the Oakland County Sheriff's Narcotic Enforcement Team, the DEA, which is the Drug Enforcement Agency, as well as the Oakland County FBI Violent Crimes Task Force. This gives the department the ability to pool resources with other local, state, and federal agencies to combat the distribution of illegal drugs, and the focus of most of these task forces is on opioids. With our net detective, he's able to be the officer in charge of cases involving Troy, and he works with all the other departments in Oakland County that participate. He's assigned to the Sheriff's Department, and they network together. Our DA task force officer works with federal agencies in an effort to stop the flow of drugs into the United States and into Michigan. Last year, our task force officer in DEA was part of multiple investigations. They seized over 11.2 kilograms of heroin, as well as 1 kilogram of pure fentanyl, which I'm told is enough to kill 330,000 people. Last year, our officer assigned to the FBI Violent Crimes Task Force was involved in very time-consuming investigations with multiple agencies, including the Narcotic Enforcement Team. At the end of their investigations, federal prosecutors charged 12 people, all which are Oakland County residents, with selling heroin mixed with fentanyl. Some of these charges include delivery of a controlled substance causing death and serious bodily injury, which carries a 20-year prison sentence. Now, Troy Police Department is aware the most effective way to deal with this opioid epidemic is treatment and prevention. And the department is always looking for ways to participate and assist in this. Our crime data analyst starting last year, formed a database to track the overdoses in the city of Troy. We also now carry opioid overdose kits. We pass these out at every roll call. It contains naloxone. What naloxone is administered through the victim's nose. We refer to it as Narcan. It's a brand name. EMS, people have had Narcan for a long time. Last year, there was at least 14 cases in the city of Troy where Alliance EMS, they're who we contract to do our service, administered Narcan to at least 14 victims, and most likely would have lost their lives without receiving this Narcan. So we did have a large number of overdoses, and we did record 6 deaths in the city of Troy. And the number is actually probably higher to that, because when we consider it a death, it's when we make the scene and they're pronounced there. A lot of the times they're transported to the hospital, and we don't have the stat after that. So we all are trained in this. We pass it out to our officers. This started last year, and on January 7th of this year, the department received a 911 call from a father who believed his son was overdosing on opioids, which doesn't happen a lot, but the officers made the scene before the ambulance did. The officers took it on themselves. They administered 2 doses. There's 2 doses in each kit. They each had a kit, so they had 4 on hand there. They administered the doses, 2 of them. The victim, within minutes, was able to talk to them and answer questions. He actually walked himself to the ambulance. So we're happy that we finally got the opportunity, and they were at the right place at the right time. If you're not aware, there's also a law in the state of Michigan that if you call 911 to report someone having a possible overdose and police make the scene, if they find a controlled substance, an amount we consider to be possession from the person overdosing or the person that called, we do not charge them with the crime. Obviously, we confiscate it and destroy it, and nobody faces a crime. This is to encourage people to call when they need help without the fear of being prosecuted. We also have a representative from our department who participates in the drug court and has since its inception at the 52 District Court. That would be Judge Hardig's expertise, though.
Perfect timing.
Yep, perfect timing. Hope versus handcuffs. This is something brand new to our department. We'll be taking part of. We hope to have it going in early February. What Hope versus Handcuffs is a community outreach program and is an initiative of Family Against Narcotics and seeks to bring law enforcement, community organizations, and individuals seeking assistance together to reduce dependency. A person seeking assistance with a drug addiction can often lose that initial commitment in a very short amount of time. It is critical that placement and meaningful addiction treatment be timely relevant to the individual. So what we're going to be doing is you can walk in the Troy Police Department 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we are going to put you in touch with Hope versus Handcuffs. There's a representative from there today. Lisa's here. She did bring a stack of pamphlets. So if you walk in, you say you need help, we will get a hold of Hope Not Handcuffs. They will send out one of their volunteers. I believe they refer to them as angels. They'll send them to our department. What we'll do is the police department will provide a location for them to conduct the intake process and begin arrangements for them to go to a treatment facility. If for some reason there's a possession amount of narcotics found on that person at the time, we're going to destroy that. We want people to come in and look for help and not have fear of being arrested. So once again, there is a stack of these to hand out. This is ran by volunteers, so if it's something that you have a passion for, you may want to talk to Lisa. We hope to have that going by February. In closing, I'd just like to say opiates are more popular and more deadlier than ever. The doctor talked about prescription pills, and prescription pills are definitely a gateway to heroin. Prescription pills are very expensive. A lot of people get hooked on them. We used to see a lot and hear a lot about Oxycontin. I barely see that anymore because it's so expensive and so hard to get. Oxycontin goes anywhere from around $1 a milligram. So that's at $30 for a 30 milligram pill. That's a very expensive habit to keep going. So people get hooked on these prescription pills. All kinds of people from all different walks of life, and they can't keep up with the price of it. So they turn to heroin, which is much easier to get and much cheaper. She talked about Vicodin, which has hydrocodone, and those are more popular to get. They're easier to get, but that goes from $3 to $6 a pill. So as you build your tolerance up, it gets more and more expensive. It's hard to keep up with. It's hard to get. They are starting regulating. The pills are harder to get these days. I go as far as to say that if you're under 21, if you know the right places to go, it's easier to get heroin than it is to get alcohol, which is a big problem. So I'd like to thank you for your time today, and if you have any questions, I'll be around.
Thank you, Sergeant Dan. Thank you, Sergeant Dan. And I did just also want to mention that the Troy Police Department and the Clawson Police Department, they both have prescription drop boxes so that you can take any of your unused or expired prescription drugs to these drop boxes during normal business times. There is also a National Take Back Day across the whole United States 2 times a year, and you can do that as well. So no longer, you can't flush them down the toilet. That's not environmentally friendly, okay? And with that, we're ready to move on to Judge Kirsten Nielsen Hardig. She is from the 52-4 District Court, and she had another commitment earlier this evening. She's a very busy lady, but she was able to get here just in time. So come on up. Thank you.
Good evening. If I had to guess, you're probably here because you're frightened. Is that why you're here? Probably, I would think. You have a lot of things to do on a Wednesday evening, and this may not be, going out to dinner or going to a movie. But from my perspective, if you're frightened, you have great reason to be. Heroin and opiates are extraordinarily addictive, which is not news to you. I think what's news, at least to me, is how difficult it still is to get doctors not to prescribe them to you. I'm going to start with an anecdote. I had my son earlier last year in March have oral surgery. And knowing what I know, I took him in and I said to the doctor face to face, I don't want him to have an opiate. I'm not interested in him getting a prescription. Would you please write it down? And the doctor said, I don't give that prescription. I'm very savvy. I understand. And so I felt comfortable. Well, then I didn't feel comfortable. So about 2 days before surgery, I called the office manager and I said, I just want it to be clearly marked that I do not want my son to have an opiate. And she again said that was great, no problem. And then my husband actually took my son, because I must have been busy elsewhere, and I said, please make sure the doctor realizes we do not want an opiate. And my son came home with an opiate. So what the doctor said to my husband was, the teeth were really in there. They were really deep. I had to do a lot of digging. I expect your son's going to be in some pain. And I was at work, and he called me, and that was my first question. And he said, yeah, the doctor said he doesn't think Motrin or Tylenol is going to handle it. They were really deep, and I think he gave us 12 or not a huge amount. And I was close to sweating. I said, well, did you give him one? And I'm like, he had. And I could barely get through my day to race home and confiscate them. And I thought, well, I'm going to see his pain tolerance. I'm going to see if I feel like it's necessary. And my son said, I'm kind of in a lot of pain. I feel like I might need one of those opiates. And so I gave him a Motrin. And he's like, it's all better. So there's about, roughly 200 opiates, doctors in the room? It's impossible for you to know all of them, right? I don't think that the doctors in the room may know the name of all of them. But you're going to have to ask, is this an opiate? You're going to keep asking. Another anecdote, I had gone to the hospital about a month ago for a migraine. I'd never had one before. And they said, we're going to give you the 3-drug cocktail. And I asked the doctor, is this an opiate? What's in the 3 shots? And I got the information from the doctor. And then when the nurse came in to give it, I asked it again. So I think the point that I'm trying to make is you're not going to know the names of all the opiates. And There's a great commercial out from Fan, and you have to think of opiates as heroin. You have to decide, is the pain my child or I'm in enough that I'm going to give a synthetic heroin? And that has a point. It has a place in lives for people who have cancer, people that are in extreme, chronic, life-ending pain. It has a place. But dental surgery, that's a huge pathway into drug addiction. Shoulder surgery, knee surgery. You know those in and out clinics where you go and you're home by night, and one of the ways they can allow you to go home by night is that you have pain medication that you can handle the pain according to how you think it is appropriate. The point is that this type of medication is extremely addictive, and heroin can be addictive from the very first time you use it. And that's not something that I think we typically see in illegal drugs. Typically, we see drugs require a certain amount of use before the person becomes addicted. And that's not my experience with heroin. My experience is that this really is something that can become addictive from the very first time that it's used. Women, my experience, young women, my experience is often it is the boyfriends in their lives that are introducing this drug to them. So parents, you're always very interested in the boys that your young women are spending time with. This is going to want to be another area that you're going to want to be sharp with. That's where I see that they are often introduced to the drug. So in our drug court, that is the most drug that we deal with. People come in mostly white, often affluent. They're getting younger and younger and younger. I would say in my court probably once every month, I am seeing a recent Troy High or Troy Athens grad who is now addicted. And it's not uncommon for the young, pretty girl to have turned to prostitution to support her habit. Obviously, she has something to sell. And there is nothing more desperate than a heroin addict who is in need of heroin. And this is, as it's been explained to me, as a judge, I sort of swim in a sea of ignorance. I'm really trying to play catch up in a super scientific field that I was trained for not at all. But this is how heroin withdrawal and the craving for heroin is quantified. It's been explained to me that they took a person who was near starvation, someone who had been without food for an extremely long period of time, and they did an MRI of the brain. And they showed them a picture of food. And the part of the brain that lit up was, they quantified it as the size of a football. So imagine how hungry you are if you went without lunch. By the time dinner's there, you're hangry, and you can imagine what it might be, how deep it would be to be hungry to the point of starvation. So none of us have hopefully ever felt that. But imagine how intense and deep and primal and visceral that need for food is. It would be intense. And it's been explained to me that the heroin addict that is craving heroin, the part of their brain that lights up is the size of a football field. So let that sink in. So by the time you're hooked, you are completely and utterly not in control. Could we really logically expect someone to be in control of a craving the size of a football field if hunger, starvation, grade hunger is the size of a football? No, we can't. So from my perspective, the way to get us out of this epidemic is to stop having people go in. We have had success in drug court. It's extraordinarily difficult and painful, but we have had it. So, did I speak on what you wanted me to speak on?
I wanted you to mention the retail fraud.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we are the retail fraud capital of the world. We have destination retail fraud. Seriously, we have people who come from other areas of the country to steal in our stores. I wish there were statistics. I've heard, and I don't know that this is true, that 1/3 of the price of everything we purchase, so let's say you just bought a new suit and your suit was $300. It's come to my attention that the real price of the suit is $200, and the extra $100 has to pay for the retail fraud. So we see people who are very desperate for drugs, and they'll do anything to convert what they're stealing into cash. The number one place to steal if you are an addict trying to turn over an item would be, anyone want to guess? Police officers are not able to play this game. Anyone want to guess? No, Sears Power Tools. Sears Power Tools. Exactly. They're small and they're expensive. They can get them out easily, and there's a market for them. So that is, I'm actually surprised those things aren't behind glass because of the quantity that are stolen. So it is, in addition to the absolute abject devastation that it delivers to a family, we are all paying. We are all paying deeply. And I get frustrated every day. I've got addicts that are in jail that I'm desperately trying to get them into treatment. And for one reason or another, they are not qualified. I had a young man in drug court, young. He's addicted to alcohol, not heroin. And I can't get him in because he had a disorderly conduct that was originally a assault and battery. I looked at this young boy who's about 23 years of age. He was born addicted. He was a crack baby. So where else was he going to go? He did exactly what he was born to do. He became addicted, and I couldn't get him into treatment. And the idea of jail versus addiction, I'm sure you won't be surprised to know that many families are very happy when their loved ones who are addicted get arrested. They sleep very well on those nights. And you can think about how sad that must be if you're relieved when your kid gets arrested, because you know that night they're not going to die. This addiction is almost a fate worse than death. And so whatever you need to do, whatever you can do to keep your loved ones away from these pills and away from people who use. Anything else I should cover? All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Judge Hardig. I wanted to share with you, it's a relatively new product, and it's called a Deterra bag. So this is something that you can open up. You can dump your pills in it, put warm water in it, reseal it, and shake it, and dispose of it. It neutralizes everything that you put in here. And it also will neutralize liquids and patches. And I know the police department don't like to accept liquids and patches, so this is another way for you to dispose of them. If you fill out your evaluation form this evening, you will get one of these free Deterra bags when you leave. Okay? So our next speaker this evening is James Kessler. He is Administrative Manager, Emergency Center at Beaumont Hospital in Troy. Thank you, James, for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. Can I start by saying thank you, Angela, for sharing your story. It takes an incredible amount of courage, and sorry, I'm distracted by this at the same time. You know, your story is incredible, and it takes a lot of courage to come and share that story, so thank you. Doc, look what you did, Judge.
You see it?
All this education up here, we can't
There we
open a
go.
computer.
There we go.
go. So I'm a horrible public speaker, I'll tell you now. So, you know, compared to Angela and the doctors and the judge here, oh, see, I just opened the same thing that was already open. My bad. There we go. So I'm going to talk about the effects that that we've seen in the hospital. And how do I start my slideshow on here? I have a secretary at work that does this for me. Sorry. F5, that'll work?
See what your F5 is. Thank you.
There we go. Look at that. Is it working? All right. So I'm not going to stand behind there because I got to see my notes.
Now, you are videotaped. So
Oh, can you still see me? Oh, how's this? Okay. So, you know, there's a nationwide crisis with opioids right now. And these are statistics mostly just for Troy Emergency Room. You know, people think of Troy as, you know, it's high class. We don't see this kind of stuff. But when you think of where Troy is, we're right on the border of Oakland County, Macomb County. And think of all the cities around here. And, you know, the sergeant said how many people they rescued. For every one that they rescue, we probably get another 5 to 10. and we also get them from every city. So Madison Heights, Warren, Sterling Heights, Utica, Washington Township, all those cities are all we get overdoses from every single one of them, and it doesn't matter that we get people that their parents are doctors and engineers, and we get people that are unemployed. I mean, it doesn't matter who you are, you're at risk for this. So we've actually, in last year, we treated for opioids 172 people with rescue medications. So these are people that came in literally dead, that needed, Narcan. They needed to be rescued. Heroin is actually classed as an opioid. However, it's illegal, so it's usually not talked about that it's actually an opioid. 91 of those were heroin. So you can see that heroin's almost more than half. It's a big contributor. And then synthetic narcotics, cannabis. These are other medications that we had to treat people for. Unspecified narcotics. Now that could be opioids. It could be heroin. We just don't know what it is because the patient was either intubated or we just didn't have information. We don't know what they took, so we just classify it as that. So you can see there's a lot of different drugs and things that we're treating. Opioids are the most prevalent, and heroin is the most common opioid that we do rescue. Like I said, 172, and you can see every month it's almost 13 to 19, 18. This is every month what we treated. 16 in January, 19, 18. Every month we're treating these, so it's at least every other day we're rescuing somebody with these medications. Now we're actually trying to focus on, because what happens when we fix the opioid crisis, what's going to happen? People are going to look for something else. So we're actually trying to focus on everything at once instead of just opioids. So we have 2 rescue medications that we use, Romazicon and then the Narcan. Romazicon is more for like benzodiazepines, like Ativan, things like that. You get a lot of mental health patients that take those medications, and those are the patients that are more likely to take large quantities of those medications and the Narcan. So I just included those just because we do treat that quite a bit. So the two rescue drugs, like I said, is Narcan and Romazicon. The problem with Romazicon, like I said, is used for benzodiazepines. Those are just a couple of them. We use it too late because we're so focused on opioids that we don't think that they took these other medications. So by the time we think, maybe they took Ativan on top of this, they've already got an anoxic brain injury, and it's hard to rescue them from that. Narcan is used much more frequently, though. Like I mentioned, almost 293 times we actually used it. 172 were true rescues. When I say true rescues, these are people that were literally dead. They were blue. They were not breathing. If you come in and you have mental status changes, we can still use it if we suspect it. We see this a lot in our older folks because they become, as your livers and things start to slow down, you don't process the medications as well. So, you think you're doing a great job by treating your mom or your grandma or whoever who has, cancer or has, broken legs and things, and their body can't break these down anymore. So they just build up and build up and builds up. So we have to treat a lot of patients like that as well. But some of the other opioids that you're going to hear names of when you're in the public, fentanyl, carfentanil. Carfentanil is being mixed now with heroin and as well as fentanyl. Carfentanil is a horse tranquilizer that you can get online from China. And one of the things that I discovered through the Wayne County Department of Public Health is that heroin, so what happened, there was a cocaine shortage. So people turned to heroin. Well, now there's a heroin shortage, so what people are doing when they make heroin, they're mixing small doses of heroin with the carfentanil and the fentanyl. So just to give you an example, so a dose of heroin using fentanyl uses a milligram of fentanyl. When I give fentanyl for, let's say someone's got a broken leg, I give them 100 micrograms. So that dose has 10 times the amount that we're going to give. And the dose that Troy Police captured is 100,000 times one dose. So that's just to give you an idea of how strong this medication is. So our response is that we're trying to standardize our practice across the board for how we deal with opioids. We have 8 hospitals now, more than 4,000 physicians. There's around 500 emergency center physicians. So when you look at where prescription opioids come from, the number one place they come from and where people get started is from primary care physicians. And a lot of times those start in the ER. You come in for a broken leg. So we give you 5 days worth. You go to your primary care physician, they give you much more. So a perfect example of that is myself. I had a back injury when I was in the Marine Corps. About 3 years ago, I re-injured it and I needed surgery. My doctor gave me a prescription for enough narco that I could take 2 every 4 hours for 90 days. And I basically just shredded the prescription. I mean, that's how, and there's different factors leading to this. If you guys want to talk afterwards, it'll take forever. But, there's all this pressure to prescribe these medications to treat pain. So that's how easy it is for people to get these medications. So we're trying to create very firm practices regarding chronic pain. So people who have chronic pain when they come to the ERs, you are not getting narcotics, you're not getting opioids, you're not getting any of those. We will treat you with, like Motrin and Tylenol, things like that, but we will not give you narcotics or any kind of opioids unless you are a cancer patient. Oncology patients, they suffer pathological fractures and they have extreme amounts of pain. So we will treat those patients. One of our practices, we will give no more than 3 days worth of a prescription unless they're going to be seen by a physician sooner. So if you break your leg and we call the sports medicine doctor, he can see you tomorrow, we're only going to give you 1 day's worth. So that's one of the firm practices that we've really started across our system. We're also providing education and resources at the time of prescription. So if I have a kid with a broken arm and we give them a medication, usually we give them Motrin, but if it's, an open fracture, we might give like a day or two worth of an opioid. We give them information right then and there. We educate them about the risk of being addicted and not to take it unless you truly, truly need it. 400 milligrams of Motrin, everybody here takes Motrin at some point or another, actually blocks the same amount of pain receptors as 4 of morphine. So the research shows that we don't have to use those medications. So that's why we're really trying to make this standard practice. And we're also trying to engage our staff just to become more engaged and to help preventive strategies. Just our response in the emergency room, like I mentioned, the standard prescriptions, no opioids for pain. We do not refill prescriptions for chronic pain patients any longer. If you run out of your pain medication, we will not give you a refill. And, up till maybe a year ago, we would. You would come in, you have chronic back pain for 15 years. No matter what your follow-up was, if you didn't see your doctor for 6 years and haven't had your surgery or your therapy, we would still refill it for you. That's just what we did. So we no longer do that. We will not do refills for chronic pain medications. We treat acute injuries as appropriate. And we get, like I said, we give enough just to get them through to the specialist. So what we also did, because we're pretty much the largest health system, I don't want to brag, largest health system in Metro Detroit now. So considering 8 hospitals, we have a couple hundred satellite facilities. So what we've done is we actually created a system-wide hospital committee on opioids. I'm actually a member of 2 of them, the pain education subcommittee and the hospital subcommittee. And what they're doing is each one is focusing on different things. So we have our education subcommittee, and what they're doing is they're just trying to educate patients. We have a 2-hour class that we now provide. Troy started doing it in August, and all of our hospitals are going to do it by January of next year. So basically, it's a 2-hour clinic for families. Doctors can take it, nurses, patients, and it just just talking about the risks and things that can happen. But we've also demonstrated that people that attend this class are less likely to use the opioids, and they have better coping skills. And a lot of them have actually sought rehab on their own. We have a primary care subcommittee, and like I mentioned, primary care physicians, this is the number one place where people get their opioids. I remember the chart I'm sorry, what's your name again? Evans showed at the beginning where it shows, the primary care physicians was way up here. It was the white column, and that's the number one place people get them. So 1/3 of our primary care physicians, when we did our research, are uncomfortable treating chronic pain. They don't know how to do it, and that's a big part of the problem. They overprescribe pain medications. So what we've done is set a system-wide goal for how to prescribe these pain medications and decrease the use of opioids and narcotics. What we're doing right now is we're actually auditing 1,000 charts, that's a big process, auditing 1,000 charts from patients that have broken bones, and we're trying to identify the pattern of how these doctors are prescribing these medications and whether they're overprescribing and whether they're not. And then we can use that to see who do we need to educate, which physician groups are doing it more, which ones are doing it less, which ones are struggling with managing pain. So that's one of the things that we're doing. And we also want to just help educate and raise awareness that opioid naive patients. So an opioid naive patient is someone that's never taken an opioid. It's like I said, I had back pain, I had back surgery. I never took an opioid the entire time. Motrin was the only thing I took. So I would be opioid naive. So I don't know what the effect is going to be on me. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to know if I want to get it, want to take more, or what I'm going to want to do if I take it. But the research shows that if an opioid naive patient has an opioid prescribed for more than 3 days post-op, they're 25 times more likely to still be taking that medication in 30 days. And then that person is 50 times more likely to still be taking it a year later. So it's just a chain that these patients get stuck into. And then our last subcommittee is focusing on the Joint Commission. That's our regulatory commission that we have to answer to. And we're doing this in Farmington Hills right now, and then we're going to expand it to the rest of the hospitals. So everybody that's going to be admitted to the ER is going to be screened for their risk of abuse of opioids. 40 to 70% of the opioids we found at surgery are unused. 76% of those are unprotected. So, remember when we were talking about locking your meds up? 76% of them are not. They're just sitting in a cabinet or they're sitting in the kitchen, so people can get them very easily. And we've noticed during this subcommittee, we're working with Farmington, that there's still just wide variations of prescribing across the 8 hospitals. So we've developed an interdisciplinary pain service at every site. Told you I'm a terrible public speaker. So what that is it's everybody. It's nurses, it's doctors, it's physicians, it's nurse practitioners and PAs. We have lawyers involved. We have everybody involved in these committees to try to help us determine what's the best way to help treat people with pain. And Beaumont's also starting what's called the Beaumont Health Pain Education Institute, and that's going to oversee all of our education initiatives. So everything that we're doing to help educate our patients, whether it's giving you a pamphlet when we prescribe it, or if it's having you take a class, they're going to oversee all of that to make sure that we're following the plans that we're supposed to. We're also having our first annual interprofessional pain conference this year. It's going to be in the summer, and we actually have physicians from around the country that are coming to this to see what we're doing, so they can actually try it in other hospitals and things like that. And what the goal of this is just to continue to raise this awareness of how we need to prescribe medications properly. I think I already talked about all that stuff. It was a duplicate, sorry, but I just found this out yesterday actually. So Troy is now partnering with Hope Not Handcuffs as well. We've been working with FAN for quite a while, so I'm pretty excited to announce this. So we're going to provide that service in our ER as well. I don't know, I think that's it. Anything else you wanted from me? No? We're good? All right, thank you.
Thank you, James. And thank you to Beaumont Hospital. They have been a big supporter of the Troy Community Coalition, and we greatly appreciate that. And now for our very last panelist, we have Dr. Daniel Farkas. He is owner and chiropractor at Back to Health Wellness Center in Troy, and he is currently president of the Troy Community Coalition. And of course, we got to get this going.
Hey, you guys, good evening. I'm Dr. Dan Farkas. I'm a chiropractor. I've been for 14 years. I'm also a certified functional medicine practitioner, and I want to talk to you guys tonight about the cost of addiction. I also want to talk to you guys about some alternatives. As we go through this, you guys heard a lot of statistics, a lot of compelling statistics. Understand this, we're 3% of the world's population in the United States, 3%. Think in your head right now, honest guess, what percent of the world's supply of opioids do you think that we take? 300. Out of 100, that's a good guess. Out of 100%, what percent do you think that we take? 80%. 95. We'll buy anything, we're consumers. As we go through this too, if you guys have been touched by anything, especially the share we got from our friend in recovery here, on your yellow sheet, please consider putting down a place, your contact information. If you know where there's a place where this information needs to be shared at, church, work, exercise, social group, recovery group, anywhere that you would like for us to come at no charge, we'll be happy to come and bring this. You can change and save lives. Each one of you people knows at least 200 people that I will never meet in my life. So we can touch tens of thousands of people just in this room. I know a lot of you are already involved and you're already concerned citizens, but let us do the heavy lifting of getting out and delivering this message to people and alternatives too as well. Please strongly consider using the power of the pen to put it to that piece of paper and get us some new places where we can get out and talk to some folks, okay? I want to talk to you now about the cost of addiction. It's big news. man, I don't even know where to begin. I've looked at this. There's money, the money that's wasted. It's just, it's staggering. When I go through these figures and I start to talk about, using big words like billions of dollars, it can get kind of vague. But a way that kind of puts into perspective for me is to think about those billions of dollars being used in Troy. So that's how I look at it. This is important. A lot of people get hurt at work. I got to tell you, I see a lot, I've seen tens of thousands of clients over years. What I see a lot of, I'm going to talk about, is people that get hurt at work. And I want you guys to understand that workers' comp, which is the legal system for taking care of the bills for the injuries that people experience at work. You're working at Best Buy, you pick up a big giant TV, you hurt your back, you go on a work comp claim. Understand this, that approximately 25% of work compensation prescription drug claims, that's the costs were for opioids. 25% of workers' comp prescription drug claims. So of all the drugs that get prescribed for all the different types of injuries, it's like, yeah, sure, they would prescribe, muscle relaxers, pain pills, anti-inflammatory steroids, et cetera, but 25% of them are for opioids. These things are expensive. This impacts people that work in commerce, that work in business, that run businesses, that pay workers' comp insurance too. It just causes that little tick that's not exactly necessary to get those little just higher rates, just that little bit more that affects lots of businesses in the community, that just puts a little extra burden on those businesses. And when you aggregate them all together, what it does, it puts a burden on our employers, not on, particularly in this case on the workforce, but on the employers, that can make it so that we just can't offer as many jobs. We can't pay as high because we have this expense. This is very important. A lot of people get hurt at work, and this is where a lot of the money goes. Cost employers for non-opioid users for a claim, about $10,853. For people that were on opioids, look how it jumps up the cost from 10 grand to almost 20 grand. It goes up double. That's what it costs. That's one claim. So opioid users cost employers nearly twice, that's 2 times as much in healthcare expenses compared to non-abusers. And if you could cut that in half, what it would do for the economy. The big cost, of course, is in lives. 91 Americans die every day from opioid overdose. These are not the dregs of society like Judge will talk about. These are not Skid Row people, okay? These are not people that forgotten people that have no family, that have no one. I see them in my practice. They are upstanding people that go to my church and your church or temple, synagogue, what have you. These are people that have kids, they have jobs, they have lives, and they just got hurt, and they're injured, and they're put in a state of pain, where a well-meaning physician has done everything in his or her power to prescribe them something to be humane, to take the pain away from them. But this is what happens. Those people's lives evolve into a state where ultimately they end up dying, passing away. Some from overdose, some voluntary overdose, some involuntary. This is the real cost. It's the lives, but 91 per day. 91 mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, husbands, wives, children. I'm going to read this to you. Opioid overdose deaths continue to increase in the United States. More than 300,000 people, that's a lot of people, have lost their lives to opioid and prescription and illicit since 2000. It's not going in the direction that we want it to go. We want it to go straight down to the ground. And if it's not doing that, I'm not satisfied with that. That's too many people, you guys. This is the disbursement of it. This chart is interesting. I want to talk about, if you look where it's dark red, that's where the big problems are. Yep, Michigan's up there. We got some dark red up there too as well. This is a concentration of it. Excuse me. Sure, where there's more dense population. I want you to point something out that's interesting. A lot of people live in California, right? 6th largest economy in the world. They want to make new California. California is so big, they want to make new California and have a whole nother California now. They're working on that. If you can look and see, not a lot of density there considering the population, even around Los Angeles. Why do you think that is? Answer, California is a very progressive place. I lived and practiced there three and a half years ago for years. Nice place, nice weather. Also, they're very progressive in how they handle their health care. Because what are they close to? They're close to Asia. Asian people and Asian cultures have been practicing medicine, or Asian Eastern medicine, for about 8,000 years now. And California is highly infiltrated by that. You'll see that, yes, they still do have a problem. It's not totally white there. But because of the influence of Eastern culture, which we're going to talk about, it seems that they're more likely to use natural approaches. Pretty cool. Another reason to love California. Okay, here we go. Loss in productivity. What's productivity? How much you can produce. If the people that work for you or that work alongside you or work above you have serious drug and opioid problems and are half unconscious, knocked out on their feet, are things going to get better or worse at work? Probably worse. So I'm going to read to you here. Estimated loss in productivity for people in the United States with opioid use disorder totaled $20.4 billion. So big number, $24 billion. I want $20.4 billion injected into Troy over 5 years. I think about stuff like that. It's like, wow, what would our city look like? What would our county look like? What could we do? But this is what it costs. That's productivity. These stats are, this is 17, this is 2017. Is it a year or a month? Yeah, year. Good question. Why don't you, some of these might be pretty obvious. We want to make sure that you guys know some physical warning signs to look for. These are new drugs. We know what drunk people look like. We can tell what people high in marijuana probably act like. Not a lot of people are completely familiar with the warning signs for these types of drugs. I'm kind of going to read to you here. And some of these people you may live with, or you may be close to, you may see around work, you exercise, church, social groups, et cetera, et cetera. Watch for these things. And if you see these things, you know these are people that need to be reached out and touched by you now that you have this fantastic knowledge about opioids, that you're all experts now. Watch for these things. Excessive sweating, urination, and thirst. These things cause people to become very, very thirsty, and they also give them terrible constipation. Anyone seeing the commercial on TV for the drugs to help treat opioid-induced constipation? They're out there. Yep, watch, you'll see one. Watch the Super Bowl, there'll probably be one. Uncontrolled diarrhea. Yep, it's poison. Your body doesn't like it, and it likes to eliminate it. If all of a sudden junior or junior miss is starting to have terrible, terrible stomach problems, you do their laundry. Things don't look normal. Consider these ideas. Spastic shaking, drowsiness, dizziness, insomnia, loss of consciousness. If they're up walking around at night, or if during the day they're just knocked out for no good reason, which is kind of tough. I have a 16-year-old, and I've wondered about this, but he's been that way his whole life. If he's not at school, he's unconscious in his room doing, I don't know what he does in there. Yeah, growing, yeah, you better be. Physical dependence and outright addiction. But these are just things that you can watch for. Little tips. Vomiting, sweating, nausea, runny nose, dilated pupil, watery eyes, yes. Anxiety, insomnia, localized pain. It causes pain. Isn't that weird? The drugs cause pain. They cause people to have pain. It's like you have neck pain all the time. From where? You have back pain, arm pain, shoulder pain, leg pain, headaches. Like, where did this come from? Couple that with these other things, and you can start to put two and two together. And it might not just be kids. These could be adults. These could be grandparents, parents, et cetera, et cetera. Remember, this is just not young, reckless people we're talking about. Once they get off this, all these symptoms can slowly fade too. These are some other sides of opioid abuse. Other warning signs: sudden mood change, irritability, negative attitude, personality change. If you think there's something going on, there probably is. Extreme changes in groups of friends or hangout locations. Boy, that too as well. As I understand it, all you got to do is somehow get to Woodward Avenue and get on a bus and go south, and the kids all know where to go. There's places where they can go and buy pills and buy heroin, and there's people that work the buses too that will be glad to sell them whatever they came to buy. Lying or being deceitful. Boy, I know it can be a little tough to filter this out with a teenager, certainly, but these are people your age, your friends, your family, your coworkers too. If they start turning into somebody that you don't recognize them as, consider that these are opioid abuse signs. Certainly for young people who are very concerned with personal appearance, and mature people too, losing interest in personal appearance, extracurricular activities or sports, bad performance at school or work, borrowing money, or having extra cash or stealing money or money missing from your wallet or from your purse. Visiting or even purchasing pro-drug websites too. Easy history search will reveal that. I want to talk to you guys now about some alternative ways to manage this too. I want to make sure that you guys get out of here with some gems. I want to leave you with some seeds that can be planted into trees that produce fruit that can help people. My goal of what I have for all of my clients that come into my office is that I want them to leave with a very profound understanding of alternatives to opioids and things that actually work. You guys all know a lot about dentistry. You really do. You know what a molar is, an incisor, a cap, a crown, a root canal, an x-ray, braces, toothbrush, water pick, dental floss, all that. You know a lot about this stuff. What I want you guys to, and what I want everybody to get an understanding of is a common household knowledge about what to do if you have a condition that qualifies you for opioid use. One thing that works really well, someone had mentioned earlier, there's this thing, it's called a CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy. I got to tell you, this works really good for when people have pain or pain syndromes. A lot of times, it is not just the pain itself, but it's the emotion that the person feels about the pain. There can come some guilt along with pain. Some people are like, boy, I must have done something to feel this way. CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, it works fantastic, not just for pain, it works for so many things. Frankly, if you feel like there's something in your past, childhood, unprocessed fear or anger that you want to get rid of, CBT works wonderful. It's not hard. You can frankly do it on yourself. But it's best to have it administered by a mental health professional and have you walked and guided through a process that can cause you to reframe how you think and feel about pain. This is a great alternative for people, and it works. I have recommended this to people in my practice for years and years and years, and it works great. Say you have chronic shoulder pain, chronic shoulder injury, and you can't do what you want to do. Instead of focusing on the pain and what you can't do, CBT allows you to systematically go through and quantify, frankly, the good things that you have in your life and makes you reframe what you're not able to do into, frankly, a state of gratitude. And you can get locked in that state of gratitude, not focus on the pain, and not just be so focused and obsessed about trying to find a way to get rid of it at all costs. Next. Massage works great. There's massage and there's something called myofascial release. Massage works fantastic for pain. It really does. What happens, especially in cases of things called, so you guys might have heard something called fibromyalgia, or somebody in this room might have fibromyalgia. What that means is chronic muscle pain. What happens from the muscles being chronically overused and overworked and overused, they build up toxicity. Those toxins can grow in pockets in the spine. They grow all over the body. Fibromyalgia is a big laundry list of symptoms, including digestive problems. A very knowledgeable and very experienced massage therapist or manual therapist can work these out and make pain that's just been there for years, just sheets of pain up and down the back, the spine, just completely go away. This can work, and it does work. I see it. I have that available in the last 10 years. I've just seen it grow in my office and in other offices of natural health care providers. It's wonderful. It works great, and everyone likes massage. I want to tell you, though, comes with a caveat. If you actually have a problem that true deep tissue therapeutic massage can help, you're probably not going to enjoy it. So that's what we say. If they come out smiling, they turn around and go back in. You know, they didn't do a good enough job. It works. Chiropractic care, that's my profession. That's Dr. Iben's profession. My professional training is I'm a chiropractor. Chiropractic is pretty simple. The idea is that your spine is the home for your brain and spinal cord. It's really important. It's the only organ system that's totally covered in bone. Your brain and your spinal cord, because if it gets hurt, it cannot be repaired with the technology that we have. Stem cells getting there, but we're not totally there yet. What can happen through stress, bad posture, car accidents, and just life in general? The hard bone can shift out of place and threaten to put pressure on the nerve. The problem is it gets locked, and it just stays stuck like that. The bones above and below can move. It stays stuck like that. What we do in chiropractic is we look to try to identify, and we can do this with precision. Technology has gotten wonderful. with precision to figure out what's not moving and use gentle chiropractic adjustments that feel like very little more than a clicky pen clicking against your skin. And it's very effective for infants all the way up to geriatric age people that have bone softening disease. My goal as a chiropractor is to educate people on how chiropractic can help them too. I'm telling you, there's low force techniques. There's techniques that all that old twisting, cracking, and popping, that still works for some people and is still done widely, but it's not necessary. Some people are like, oh, I don't want to go in there, guy or girl's going to break my neck. They're going to crack and twist and pop my back. I heard somebody died, got their neck broken, et cetera, et cetera. Like, it's not that way anymore. Technology's gotten so much better. This, in my opinion, is probably one of the most viable approaches for opioid abuse prevention, because this is all about neck and back pain, man. It's like, this is what it's all about. Chiropractic can help. That's what I do all day long. So many people, got to tell you something. I sit down and I look at people's intake forms about their pain, and I start looking at their medications, and the rare occasion that they actually do volunteer that they're on an opioid, and I start talking to them about getting off the opioid. I've had people literally get up and walk out the door, and they've looked at me and said, wait a minute. So if you treat me, there's a possibility that I might not have this condition anymore. And I'm like, yeah, that's the idea, hopefully so. Like, so does that mean that I won't get a prescription anymore? I'm like, well, if you don't have pain, and then and then I'm like, whoa, man, that was fast. Like, holy smokes, walked right out the door. Happens a few times a year. Almost done, you guys. Emotional freedom technique. This is fantastic. I got to tell you, there's a guy, Dr. Joseph Sarnell, guy's a genius. He wrote this book that chronic pain syndromes that manifest and move all over the body, even though the injuries have healed, what those are, they're just manifestations of unprocessed fear and anger. If you feel like you kind of have about the same level of pain at different areas of your body, sometimes it's your shoulder, sometimes it's your knee, sometimes it's your neck, it's your back, and it's always about a 4, 5, or 6 on a 0 to 10 scale. Probably got some unprocessed fear and anger that your subconscious is manifesting pain so you don't feel those feelings of fear and anger. It's exactly what happens. When you slam your hand, what do? You grab it and you squeeze it to stimulate those nerves that sense pressure so that you don't feel the pain. That's exactly how it happens. Emotional freedom technique, it's on YouTube videos all over the place, easy to do on yourself. Works wonders to get people out of those pain syndromes that are just truly, truly in between their ears to reprogram their subconscious. Reiki massage is fantastic for the metaphysical crowd. People just use the energy in their bodies, and they just use energy from their hands, and they place it over people and put good intention. It's just like faith healing. 95% of the world believes in a higher power or has a religious base. This is in line with that too. If you're interested, Reiki, R-E-I-K-I. If you want someone to not touch you at all and try to help you with a pain syndrome, could be an answer for you. And acupuncture. It's a real thing. Acupuncture works. Where'd it come from? Eastern medicine. Guess where acupuncture is real popular at? California. Did you see how there's not as bad as a condensed opioid problem in California? Acupuncture is wonderful. Insurance pays for acupuncture. It's fantastic. And acupuncture is not terribly expensive. Same idea as chiropractic. They just remove pent-up energy in your body, get it flowing properly, pain goes away. Works great. There are other natural alternatives and therapies, essential oils, vitamins, supplements, et cetera, et cetera. I'm a certified functional medicine doctor. I use laboratory testing to figure out what natural things to put you on, and it fixes up people's digestion and inflammation just over and over and over again. Natural is just the way to go. It just is. These are all the sources. Real slow, I want to read all this to you. I said that joke last time. It's still funny, see? Real slow, I'm going to read this to you. No. These are all our sources. We're not pulling these numbers. We're not pulling all these facts out of thin air, you guys. Nancy.
Thank you, Dr. Farkas. Okay. I'd like to take a moment and go over the packet you received this evening, just to go over everything. So the first thing you had was a little card. So this card is just a reminder to take your unused or expired prescription drugs to either the police department in Troy or in Clawson. And if you know this, and you can hand this card to somebody else. Yep, it's a good reminder. Put them in a plastic bag so that you can have them ready and you can just dispose them. The second sheet is your evaluation form. If you turn it in, you will get a deterra bag. I'm going to ask Beverly Owens to please stand because she will be collecting the evaluation forms in the back and providing you with a deterra bag. The pink sheet is treatment providers, inpatient or outpatient, and these are local. So if you need these or you know somebody who does, we made a list for you. The second sheet, we had to throw in recreational marijuana because we wanted to educate you. We have a crowd here this evening, so read this over. Recreational marijuana is coming, but we want to prevent it from happening. It's this one. Did you get that one? Yes, clear the smoke. The next one is Be the Solution. This is, again, about prescription drugs. Information about did you know, risk factors, warning signs, talking to your kids, and what you can do, so prevention. And then the last sheet is the blue form, and that is a membership form if you are interested in being a member of the Troy Community Coalition. And now we will happily take questions from anybody in the audience. Any questions for any of our expert panels? Would you stand up and ask your question?
Well, actually, I'm just going to ask you if the presentations would be available for download or something.
Emailed out?
Yeah.
Yes, if you leave me with your email address, I would be happy to do that.
Okay.
Okay? Yes.
The judge was asking what could be done to try to help things. You've got the wrong audience here. The kids need to hear about this, and they need to hear it every single school year. And because they'll put pressure on each other, just like they did with smoking with the tobacco. We managed to curb some of that. They're the ones that are using it. You know, the old people, the baby boomers have a lot to say about what's going on, which I'm part of it. I'm older than all of you sitting there. I watched the narcotics leave the operating room and go to the ER and go to the ICU and then go out to the dentist and go out to the street. People stayed in the hospital. They never went home for a week or 2 weeks after their operation. They only got the notes 2-3 days, and they were cut off. They never went home with a pain prescription, a narcotic prescription. But now they do, because the doctors didn't want to get the calls at night. And then the edict came down, we have to ask how much pain do you have? Categorize it, 0 to 10. It hurts, it hurts, it hurts. You're a bad doctor if they hurt. So you keep ramping up, giving them all different kinds of cocktails, and nothing works after a while because they're overdosed. They're anesthetized, then it works. But the teens need to hear every single year. When I went to Maine State, they had a personal safety class every single year. Many of the women would show up because we came out of the medical school at different times, especially in the dark. And the kids, they need to hear that every single school year. I was wondering, how valuable are the treatment programs? They're costly, and if the people don't want to really go in and voluntarily, look at Lindsay Lohan, how many treatments did she, then you've got the media. You've got the millionaire people that are making millions and they're drug addicts, and the media just kind of breezes over that.
That's a good point. I sat through one of our recent meetings, and Judge Hardig just blew us away at the efficacy of drug court and the effort that they're putting into that. I didn't know that judges could be so kind and patient and understanding with people, and they have had. So that's what we're doing here, and it's very effective. Instead of just shipping them off and sending them, Judge could talk. I was mesmerized by it. I was like, wow. These things, these in-between interventions, to me, just as an outside person looking in, I think they're pretty darn. I think they're really effective. So I understand your point, but yeah, I do. I think we have something special going on here. So, and it's because of people like Judge Hardig and our city attorney, Lori Greg Bloom, and some other people working hard. Yeah.
Another question, this lady.
I was just curious if any of you have done any alternative medicine as far as, since it does start with the dopamine, whether you've tested dopamine and serotonin in the urine, and like in the court system as well with these people, because I know you can become successful if people are lacking arginine or some of the neurotransmitters. Because it can really help them if they're lacking it and have had trauma.
I'm not sure that I'm the one to talk about this. We do drug test, but we don't drug test for anything other than typically illegal drugs. I just, about a year ago, I took a meditation course, a little Eastern medicine, and it was kind of a lengthy course. I took my 16-year-old daughter, and so now most days I meditate twice a day, and I'll tell you, I come home from work and I want to hurt somebody. I'm not in a good mood. I am not in a good mood. And I say, well, I'm going to go meditate. My family goes, good. We'll see you in 20. Yeah, for me, it's been great. I don't think that was exactly your question.
But I would like to say, to her comment, I'm thankful that my son is going to celebrate his 21st birthday because it is very, very easy in the Troy schools to get a hold of the drugs. It's very easy.
My sons are in their mid-30s. They could get anything they wanted in Troy High back then.
Yes.
In the late 90s.
Which my daughter.
It's a good thing I was hanging out of the kitchen counter.
To answer your question about neurotransmitters and serotonin, yes, there is testing in natural health care practitioner's office. Serotonin, probably 75% of it is made in the lining of the small intestine. That's why the evaluation, treatment, and maximization of the gut's important. And you can test for neurotransmitters pretty simply with blood or urine or saliva, and then the answer to that is to give them amino acid precursors.
But very few, I will say though, very few doctors support it.
Oh, yeah, we got this one.
Another question over there?
Yeah, my name is Deacon Chris Stark, and I serve at St. Thomas More Catholic Church on Adams Road in Troy. And in the last year, I've buried 2 young people from this epidemic. And so that's why I'm here tonight, is just to kind of get a sense of what is being done about the scourge. And I thought tonight's panel was very effective at helping us to understand what the problem is. I think now as a community, we have to come together and figure out what the solution is going to be and how best to do it. You offered to speak at different organizations. So if there was a youth group at the church or something like that, that the Troy Coalition would come and speak to.
We would put maybe a panel together, we'd talk with you and figure out what your needs are.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, and make that happen. Did you have a question?
Yeah, my name is Lisa Danhoff, and I'm a health teacher at Troy High School. And I will speak to the fact that it is difficult, and we obviously don't know the solution. And Judge Hardig does come into our school and brings her drug court into our school every semester. Obviously, I'm here for a reason, and talking to our youth is amazingly difficult with everything that goes on in the walls of our school every day. Our administrators can't do their job because they're busy policing and acting like detectives. And to reach our youth, our freshman class is unbelievably difficult, and they don't want to hear what you have to say. And it's a very challenging, daunting task. I cannot thank all of you enough. We can read statistics, we can teach them, but whether they're learning, a lot of times there's parent backlash because you're giving their kid a hard time, or, it's a systemic problem, and I don't know that there's a single solution, but I want you to know, with our principal that we have in place at Troy High, we are trying everything that we can try as many times as we can try it, and we are open to having people come speak all the time in our classrooms. We work with Officer Julian. We have people come into our classroom to speak about these things that are above our knowledge and what we can provide, and just as their teacher, sometimes they just tune us out. So we bring in the community, and I know Judge Hardig has been in our community and in our schools, so I just wanted to speak to that and let everyone know that we're doing what we think we can do, and it's a systemic problem, and it's just challenging.
Thank you, Lisa. One more back there.
My name is Scott Darian. I'm just a citizen here. I know a lot of folks here. A lot of folks know me because I get involved. One of the things I've gotten involved in is Rockin' Resources, and they're here tonight. Rockin' Resources has put on a fabulous program to bring the kids to them that are on these drugs. And they just did a great big thing in September in Heritage Park, and I'd like to have them tell you a little bit about that, just about 2 seconds.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Cheryl. She loves me for that.
Surprise. I just told her. I said, I don't like talking in front of people, so don't do that.
What was the name of that program?
It's called Rockin' Resource for Heroin and Opiate Awareness. My husband, Darren, actually started this. If you want to.
I'm a paramedic. I've been a paramedic for 27 years, so
I saw both sides of what was going on. When I worked in the field, it was different. You had this attitude, it was just another junkie. When it started affecting kids that I coached in football and kids that I saw growing up, I was like, all right, I gotta change my attitude. I'm not a paramedic anymore. I gotta be a parent. I gotta be just a citizen who gives a crap about what's going on in the community around us. Not just Warren, but Clawson, where I grew up. I mean, you saw these things when we were young in the 80s, but it wasn't this prevalent. Kids weren't 21 to 27 years old dying at 172 a day is what the actual statistic is now. 172 a day. So being a musician, I decided to put on an event that involved music, because music is like ear candy, and most people aren't aware of what's going on, so we've brought in bands, had a bunch of different groups like Hope Not Handcuffs, FAN.
Brian's Hope, Project Vox. We had the Warren Coalition was involved, the City of Warren hugely involved with this. It was basically an umbrella. And our goal is, a lot of the different groups, you guys go for one area, addiction, recovery, that type of thing. We want it all together, all the resources together, and so that's what we do.
We covered from one aspect all the way to the end. You know, what people were saying is the recovery and the post-recovery are where people are failing. You know, they don't have it. So they'll get to a certain point and there's nothing left for them. There's nowhere else to go. There's no information, there's no resources for them, so they fall back into that life. So we put together our first event last year at Helmich Park in Macomb County, and didn't know what to expect, but we started having all these different resources that I didn't even know existed myself. Being a paramedic, you thought I would have known more about what was in the communities, but I didn't. So in doing so, we started having this flood of different vendors that were showing up different groups, and we ended up with over 30 of them at one event. So we had music, we had education and information all in one day. And we had
Prescription and drug drop-off, we had that as well, headed up by the Warren Police Department.
Our numbers ended up being like almost 700 people for our first event in one park. Well, we had people from Troy and Oakland County that showed up and asked if we could do the same thing here. So that's our plan. In the beginning of June, I don't know what park.
We're trying to do June 9th. In answer to your question, you said the kids need to hear it. We believe so too. We think the kids need to hear it. The adults, every age is affected in it. And the numbers is actually 172 people die every day.
And it's not just the addicts themselves or the people struggling with the drugs, it's the family. It's the friends. It's the people who have no idea that there's resources out there to help people that might be affected. So that's what we did. We just made phone calls and people called us out of the blue and wanted to be a part of it, and now it's growing. And we hope to continue growing.
It's tentatively going to be June 9th at Firefighters Park. And I would love all of your help because, you know, one person can't do this alone. One group can't do it. We all have to come together to fight this. I personally haven't been affected, but I don't want to be.
Please make sure that you send us a flyer on this. Please email us before you leave.
And I have given her my business card, and unfortunately, we are getting, time is up. They do need to close down the library today. You will be able to ask the panelists a couple of questions if you want to come up here personally and ask anybody a question. Beverly will be at the back door to collect the evaluations and provide you with a deterrent bag. Thank you so much, and I hope you have all learned something new this evening.